Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Pope Metallicus, and welcome back to Rock and Roll Religion, where we're doing a part two this time of an absolutely legendary band. And to do that, we've got the people who helped me do the first one, most of them anyway. We have, as always, our sentient marijuana plant, Sergeant Herbs. How's it going, my friend?
Hello, hello. How are you doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Just chilling, hanging out.
I'm doing all right. Jamming some heavy metal. Well, sort of heavy.
Hell
We'll get
yeah.
into we'll get into that. And just like in the first part, we have our Finnish representative, MilaMila. How's it going?
Hi.
Good to have you back.
Relaxing on my couch, drinking LaCroix.
Nice.
Very fun. Very fun.
Excited.
Yeah, this should be a good episode. We got a lot to talk about, and it's, not all good, but most of well, some of it is. So we'll get into that in a second. Bring up my graphics here. Yeah, there we go. And we got Lord Thoth in the chat. Praise be Lord Thoth.
Hail the Lord.
Hail the Lord.
And then Sister Mary Six Gun. Love the name. Big fan. And that, let's get into the first record, which is probably the best one of the ones we're going to, one of the best ones we're going to talk about today. And Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
Seventh Son, yes.
My favorite.
The last, I will say this is the last of the really classic Maiden albums.
Yeah.
For sure.
Looking back and then having listened to all the albums, this would be, I'd say, a good way to a good way to tie out the 80s era of Maiden.
Yeah.
It's a good album. I like it a lot.
Yep, it's my favorite, and every time I say it, I get shit. But I won't.
I can see why. Having listened to it again with kind of a critical ear, I can see why it's people's favorite. You're not the only person I know that this is their favorite record, and I can see why. It's a little different from what we expect from earlier Maiden, which is kind of more punk and a little bit more speed metal. But this is almost like a borderline power metal.
Yeah.
And I really, really dig it. Starting off with Moonchild, which is a fantastic song. And it's filled with stuff like "Can I Play with Madness," all that kind of stuff. And it's really just a solid record, all told. And the only thing I'm not a huge fan of is the amount of synthesizer that's on this record.
This is right about the time that Harris started playing with synthesizers. I think it was Harris that was doing the synths.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
I think they started on Somewhere in Time, but this is when it really started being in heavy rotation as part of the band's sound. And I can't say I'm a huge fan of it, but they do use it well here.
Yeah.
I am a fan of synthesizers, but also
I am in the certain bands, and I'm not in others. And maybe it's just the tone they were using with this one, but I'm like, I don't mind it, but it's not my favorite part.
Yeah, I think if you do it like this, like in this album.
Yeah, in more of a, like you say, a power metal kind of epic album like this, where it makes sense rather than like on something like Power Slave, where it's it doesn't really fit. Hey, Arkasul's here. How's it going, Ark?
Arky.
Oh, what's up?
And we have songs like Infinite Dreams isn't horrible. Like, it's not my favorite track on the record, but it's not great. Also, we officially have a Kick Ark request. So bye, Ark. And The Evil That Men Do is probably one of the better tracks on this whole record.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I remember thinking the three songs with like that one, Evil That Men Do, and Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, one right after. I like those ones out of the album the most.
Yeah, and the title track, to me, like, it's not a bad song. It just goes on for way too long, and it has way too many chorus repeats in it.
I don't know.
It is a 10-minute long song, true.
And also, like when they repeat the seventh son of a seventh son, I counted. They do it 8 times per repetition, not 7. Like if you're gonna do it
uh
that way, do it 7 times and have it like, kind of like, oh yeah, I see what you did there.
uh cheeky.
Maybe there's a reason for it. I don't know.
Maybe not, but even in like the occult and kind of mystic things, 49 has a very significant meaning. It is a very important number, whereas 56 is not. So I could see them doing it 7 times per, but it just seems like it's kind of longer than it needs to be in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
I don't have much criticism for this album. My least favorite is Can I Play with Madness, but
That's one of my standouts just because it's a little more upbeat than the rest of the album.
that's exactly why I don't like it.
Okay. Well,
It's just my personal preference.
Mm.
and like, the clairvoyant is fantastic. It's another, just solid Maiden track. And even only the good die young, even buried at the end, is still solid. So like this
It
album
is.
That's a good song, yeah.
it's not as good as Somewhere in Time at its peak, in my opinion, but it also has
Yeah.
songs that are better overall. So I think it kind of evens out.
There is not a song I would skip or feel like it's a filler.
No,
Every
I think
song
you're
has
right.
something going
No,
on.
I think you're right, and they all fit together fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is the last I think we can say until the end of this little list we have here of of albums that fit together as a unit and work
Yeah.
really, really well. And then in 1990, we move into No Prayer for the Dying, which, while not the best record ever, is still classic Maiden. Like, you still have the classic artwork, which we're going to see in a little bit changes, and I'm not a huge fan of it. And Soul Assassin, what's going on, my friend? Good to have you here as
Hello.
always.
Hello, hello. What's up, Assassin?
And then, I got the track list for this one. And like, you start off with Tail Gunner, which, pretty good song right up there and continuing Bruce's love of military aviation with like, songs like Flight of Icarus and Aces High. And this one I don't think is quite on that level, but
It's
it's a good song.
it's not bad. Um, I, I'll tell you what I was saying like a little bit before as well for the chat. When I heard Tail Gunner and Holy Smoke, I'm like, I didn't know about the lineup changes beforehand, but I looked up into it. I'm like, why is this different? Oh, okay. Adrian Smith leaves, and then we have Yannick, and this is not Adrian Smith's playing. So that took me for a shock. But then I was like, okay, they're not bad considering. I just didn't realize Smith had left, and I was expecting more Smith when I put on this album.
Yeah, and you can hear his absence when he's missing, and that becomes
Yeah,
evident later on.
yeah. But I'm not gonna lie, like there are songs that I really like where it kicks off with the title track, "No Prayer for the Dying." I was like, okay, I can get into this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, No Prayer's not bad. I
hmm
mean, from then up until like Run Silent, Run Deep is okay.
yeah, I didn't like that one as much.
Public Enemy #1, not a huge fan of. And then we have the immortal classic, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter.
I didn't know what to think of the last two songs. I
I mean,
wasn't.
Bring Your Daughter is a Maiden classic, like
Mm,
especially like later on when you hear Adrian Smith do it live. Like is
okay,
it is a classic Maiden track. Probably
okay.
one of the last we're gonna talk about for a while. Um, but no, I mean this album, like you say, losing Adrian Smith was a big blow to the band's sound in my opinion, because you have a guitar duo in Dave Murray and Adrian Smith that's absolutely legendary.
Yeah. It was a shock, but like going back and thinking about it, I'm like, okay, Janik didn't necessarily do bad. It just doesn't sound like Smith. And there are songs that I like on this album as well as the next. But yeah, I was shook up a little bit there. And then the rest of the albums after, I'm like, oh man, where did we go?
Yeah, we're not
To
saying
quote a
yet.
certain song.
Yeah, Yannick Gers is not a bad guitarist.
He's definitely not. Yeah.
But he came in at the exact wrong time of this band's career. Because
Uh,
first of all, I think they were running out of steam creatively at this point. Because I hear a lot of self quotation on this,
that
where
makes
they're
sense.
going back to just the standard Iron Maiden sound.
Yeah. No, that makes sense when you say that because like it did seem a little bit less complex and a little bit more like you're hearing at this point we're starting to hear more of that like iconic Iron Maiden guitar rhythm that you
Yeah,
were saying just kind of drags on for however long on that one song, one of the later albums. I'm just like,
and it
yeah,
used to be that
this
was
makes sense.
and it used to be that would be like in the background of a transition, so that they can keep the
Right.
time signature right.
You'd only hear it for like a short amount of time,
And
right?
you'd hear it in the background when
Mm-hmm.
you've got like a Adrian Smith or Dave Murray solo to pay attention to, and it's just kind of Steve Harris doing that in the background, where
Yeah.
like like you're keeping the rhythm a little bit, and that worked. And here it becomes the riff itself, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it's nowhere near as good.
It's becoming more prominent in this album, I'd say. Yeah, but it really kicks into gear, like in the later albums for sure. But
And unfortunately, they're
it's,
doing like more bland versions of earlier Maiden songs.
uh, yeah,
And unfortunately, that was a pattern that's going to continue here for quite a while.
I'm still amused. I completely forgot this even existed.
Well, there's a reason most people forget these albums exist.
Yeah. I can't
Uh,
believe.
there's
Yeah.
well, it makes sense. There's not as many memorable songs like in this period of the '90s, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't fault them for it. Smith left, Yannick adding to the band kind of like as they're running out of steam. Yeah, it,
Yeah,
it all makes sense.
adding a band member at this point can either work or it can't in terms of your
Hmm.
creativity. And like the example I would use is Richie Faulkner coming into Judas Priest when KK Downing left. Like
Right, right.
he
Mm.
added a whole nother dimension to the band and a different sound that still worked as part of Judas Priest, partially because he grew up as a Judas Priest fan.
Right, right.
So like he came in and he knew what the sound was, and he didn't try to do too much different from KK. He just had his own style a little bit and kind of added it in where it fit. Whereas Yannick, I think these guys were just, I don't think they really trusted him or had a working relationship with him yet. So I think they kind of played it safe on this one and didn't really throw too much at him
Yeah, yeah.
and relied a lot on Dave Murray for the leads.
Yeah,
Which, if you have to rely on Dave Murray for a lead guitar role, there are worse people you could send that to, like most guitar players.
yeah, no, Murray was solid. Like, see, there's this. That's where I was getting when I was listening to the leads, and I like would hear Murray playing more. I'm like, okay, I dig this. I dig this. I can listen to this. But yeah, oh man, it's you hear it a lot more prominently when you get into like Brave New World, but that's a
Yeah,
whole topic for down when we get to it.
yeah, and like
Yeah,
you don't
this
you
he
only really notice Avery Smith's difference when you hear him back in the band 10 years later.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Bruce Dickinson's last album for 8 years with this band with Fear of the Dark,
Fear of the Dark. Yeah.
which you still have the pretty good cover art. Like I wouldn't say it's up there with Seventh Son or Somewhere in Time, because
Mm-hmm.
those covers are fucking amazing.
Hmm.
And for new listeners to the stream, if there are any, album art is important. It's really important because like especially for people who have never heard the band before or just coming into it, that's what draws your eye. when you're in the record store, yes, back in the day there were record stores, and you just went in and bought stuff off the rack. And if you're just looking for something new to listen to, you're just looking down the rack, and if something has really cool album art, you'll at least take a look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
More than one album I've bought just because of the cover, and
Yeah. Yeah.
most of them I end up really enjoying.
Yeah, when I was 12, I was in a record store and I was looking through CDs and I was getting into black metal.
Yep.
And I saw Transylvanian Hunger and I bought it without
Oh, yeah.
even knowing what I was getting into.
Oh yeah, I mean those album covers are fantastic. Like them, or like even some of the '80s like Bathory album covers are just awesome.
Yep.
And it's very indicative of what you're going to hear. Like, and this, we'll get into the track listing here. It starts off strong with "Be Quick or Be Dead." That's actually kind of a banger. And "From Here to Eternity" isn't bad. It's a pretty solid song, if a little long. And "Afraid to Shoot Strangers" is, I think, where this album kind of starts to stumble. Probably bottoming out with "Judas Be My Guide."
Yeah, this is a weak one.
Yeah,
very weak.
I'd agree. Like, this is where I get to the point where I'm like, okay, there are some parts of songs that I like, and I'd agree with the first two tracks being the stronger ones, but as I'm going through the rest of the album listening, like, I'm like, okay, I can pick out parts that I like, but I'm not like enjoying the entire song, like the musical direction it's taking. I don't know.
And outright, it's not like outright offensive.
It's
but
not
it's just
terrible.
boring. It's just boring for most of it. Like, here we go. Like, yep, it's another track.
I got the feeling of like, yeah, this is feeling a little bland listening to it. Like, I'm getting bored. Yeah.
And this is where you really,
This
is where you really hear this band start really running out of steam.
Yeah, which is unfortunate for Yannick, and he's trying to take on the responsibilities, and the rest of the guys are just like, oh, fuck this, man.
Yeah, you're just
really
like,
get that feeling.
It's like when you show up to work Monday morning, you didn't get enough sleep, you're kind of hungover, and you're just like, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost the passion, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, I mean, they're at this point 12 years into their career, and they had been touring constantly, doing albums constantly for the last decade, a little over. So it makes sense that they need to take a break just to recollect themselves, kind of reconnect with the music in a lot of ways, and get back at it. Like maybe take like a 4 or 5 year hiatus, and maybe do a side project in the middle of that. But that's not what they did. They just kept chugging when they really didn't have it in them. And a lot of it feels forced. Like, like you can hear in some of the solos, especially on this record, like I can tell Dave really wanted us to like this, but I also kind of don't.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I'll say those are the parts that I usually end up liking as Dave's playing. I'm like, oh man, I know these guys can do better than this.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially when you have so many previous examples,
right,
of really, really solid either dual solos with Adrian and Dave, or just Dave by himself, or just Adrian. Because if you guys don't know, Iron Maiden back in the day, anyway, I think this is still the case. They don't have a lead guitarist; they have two. There is no rhythm and lead guitar, and they kind of drop in and out of their own lead breaks and play the rhythm in the meantime.
Well, so yeah, I get the feel listening to them two jam together. It's almost kind of like jam band but metal style. So it's like a jam metal band. Like just listening to the way those two can trade off solos and how well they're like playing their rhythms together. It's fun to listen to, and it's one of the reasons why like that's part of Maiden's sound, I'd say.
And that's I mean, and these guys are the reason a lot of us picked up a guitar for the first time.
Yeah.
And we're just like, I'm gonna go try to play fucking Power Slave.
A lot of guitarists that get into it because of metal, we can usually point to Iron Maiden's playing. Like, Yeah.
In my case, it's Judas Priest with Glenn Tipton with some of those righteous freaking sounds. And Herbs, I think I sent you a
Mm.
video I saw with some of Glenn's leads just
Yep.
isolated,
Yep.
and it's fucking brilliant.
Yep.
And
That was good stuff.
I could probably do the same with Iron Maiden up until this point.
Yeah.
Because at this point, Dave is your lead guitarist, and Yannick is kind of your rhythm, and I think he does some parts of solos, but you don't have any of that like harmonized solo that you heard on a lot of early Maiden albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have any of like the really like dueling guitar stuff that was famous on like Fear of the Dark, or not Fear of the Dark, but Number of the Beast, and um those albums like Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, and Power Slave.
Right.
So I think like maybe it's just that they didn't have that rapport with each other and couldn't play off of each other like that. Maybe Yannick's not very good at improvisation or
Also,
whatever.
too, I was reading a little bit. It sounded, from what I was reading, it sounded like Adrian Smith and Dave Murray were like best friends since they were kids.
Oh yeah, and
So
they grew up playing together. So like,
yeah, there's a connection that Murray is just not gonna have with Yannick at all. Because
and also there's got to be, no matter how much you want to stamp down on it, there's got to be a little bit of resentment there, where it's just like, hey,
yeah,
one of my best friends in the world was playing alongside me for the last 15 years almost, and now he's gone and you're here.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Adrian Smith got fired. I don't think he left. I may be confusing him with Clive Burr, but I think Adrian got fired, which, if that's true, that is one of the most retarded decisions you could make. To
I
get
think it was originally Murray got kicked out of the band because of another vocalist that they had. And then after that vocalist was kicked from the band, they immediately brought Murray back like 6 months later. But
well, yeah,
Adrian, I don't
he
know
had
if
an
he
issue
was
with Paul Diano, but
fired, but
I don't think I've heard that he was fired.
I don't know whether
he
he was fired or he quit.
he
So
left
Mm.
the band. But from what I was reading, it's like it was like a mutual agreement of some kind. He just did
okay,
not like what they were doing with No Prayer of the Dying.
which I can certainly yeah,
Yeah,
I can certainly see why. And if so,
yeah.
and also Hailfish Jozo and Emperor Doomsday. Welcome to the
Hi,
chat.
Els.
Welcome to the chat, boys.
Hello, hello.
And yeah, I mean, most of this album, like we said, it's not like offensively bad, except Judas Be My Guide. I really, really just thoroughly dislike that song.
It's not great.
It's
No,
not.
it's really not. Um,
Uh,
Fear is the Key is not offensive, but it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, this is a standard Maiden track. And that's what maybe that's one of the reasons these two, like this and No Prayer for the Dying, are so just subpar. Is they were getting formulaic,
Yeah.
yeah.
where you could like kind of lay out a song, like lay out a timetable, and like they'll hit it like, oh yeah, we're 2 minutes into the song, here's the lead.
I think they may
And
have gotten a different producer too. I can't
yeah,
remember if I read that right.
I think for the last one they had a different producer, Martin Birch,
Right,
and he's going
right.
to produce a lot of albums for them. In fact, I think he's produced every one since. I don't know. Actually, no, sorry. It's Kevin something now. But Martin Birch is a good producer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so let's ask, what is Maiden's most popular song? That's
Aces High.
Aces High might be it. Number of the Beast or the Trooper, I would say, is up there in
Yeah.
contention.
Yeah. 2 and 3. A solid 2 and 3, yeah.
Aces High had its own music video, which is great. Hallowed Be Thy Name was also a huge hit for them. But nothing out of this area really. Wasted Years was a big song for them, but that's off of Somewhere in Time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And going into this era, I mean, also we're going into the early '90s where metal basically just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Because when you look at when this album came out in '92, the grunge movement was in full swing. And I know we complain about grunge every fucking episode on this one,
Ugh.
but it 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 bears repeating that grunge killed metal in a lot of ways. Like, and even the metal bands that were around were either underground or changing their style to be more like the '90s mainstream rock bands.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking at you, Metallica.
Well, this album does have one big song. It's the
Yes.
title song.
Yeah, and Fear of the Dark
Mhm.
itself. And they buried it at the tail end of the album.
Yep. Which is
Which,
interesting.
yeah, that's an interesting choice. Like on vinyl, I could see it because you're that you released that as a single and everyone loves it. So then you put
Mhm.
it at the tail end of the track listing, so that people have to listen to the whole album and maybe they'll find something they like in there.
Mm, Good
Yeah.
reasoning. Yeah, but I mean, unfortunately for the album, like you've got the
Almost
first and the
every
last one.
Yeah, almost everything but the bookends is
Like I said, this is where it gets to like points where like there are parts of some of the songs that I'll like, but there's like other parts that I don't
yeah.
like.
And unfortunately, getting into a little history of the band before we get into the next record,
hmm
this would be Bruce Dickinson's final output with the band until the year 2000, as he would leave the band in 1992 and be replaced by Blaze Bailey, which, first of all, it's a stupid fucking stage name.
Agreed, 100% agreed.
Yeah.
And second of all, like, I'm not saying he's a bad singer, and I'm not saying his style doesn't work in some bands. Those bands are not Iron Maiden. And just about everything would go off the rails when we move to our next album here, being The X Factor. Jesus fucking Christ, what a trash pile.
The original album art is just it looks so bad.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah.
They,
I
they made
know.
they made Eddie look like a Neanderthal vampire. And at least they're giving him a lobotomy, which kind of symbolizes the music on this record.
I didn't even think about that.
As
That's
in,
funny.
I'd probably rather get lobotomized.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
Like, there's not a single track on this record that and Trey, you are absolutely correct. The art is fucking awful, and unfortunately, it doesn't get better from there.
It doesn't. It just gets worse.
It is just. Oh, Soul Assassin, you're not wrong. I think that might be an insult to the Crypt Keeper.
Ouch.
Like this album art, like, it's, first of all, it's a complete departure from Maiden. And Trey, I think you might be right. I think they might be trying to copy the claymation style from Tool, who we discussed last week.
Right.
If you guys haven't seen that, I would go watch it. That was a fun episode. We had Mark the Cyborg on, and he's fucking awesome. And that band is just something special. But yeah, it does look like bad claymation. It does fit the '90s, and everything went like for a really dark kind of grays and browns tone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And man, this entire era of music was pretty much just a mistake.
Yeah. Well, every time I listen to this stuff, I always think that this is not that bad, but I just want Bruce to sing it.
Well, and the thing is, some of it is actually fairly good when Bruce Dickinson sings it live.
Exactly. Yep. Sign of
Right.
the Cross. I heard it
Yeah,
live.
actually,
It's great.
the live version with Bruce in charge, it actually sounds like a later Maiden song,
Yep.
like off of Brave New World,
Yep.
which
Right.
like, but it shouldn't take a live version with a different singer to make a song come across as a Maiden tune.
Yeah. Like you said, I don't think Blaze is a bad singer. I just don't think the tone of his voice is very good,
And
especially for metal.
yeah, especially not good for Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
where you're used to these soaring operatic vocals with a ton of power in the high end, and Blaze Bailey's voice is not that.
No.
I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah, like
I'm not
I
a
get
fan of it at all.
like with other bands, I could see his vocal style working, but not this one.
Okay, this is what gets me too. I was, like as I'm listening to Maiden tracks and scrolling through some of the comments and seeing people say that they like Bailey's voice, I'm sitting here going, "Really? Are you really?
Hey,
No, I
that
don't believe it."
like that's okay. People are allowed to have shitty taste in music.
I know, but man, yeah, no, just uh,
Yes, they are
uh,
heretics, and yes,
I'll agree that
they'll
he's
get what
not a
they
bad
deserve in the
singer.
afterlife. But you know,
I'm sure there's some style of like rock that he would fit in with, but his style is not really good for metal at
but
all. Like Mila
Mm-mm.
says.
people who say they like these two albums, they're probably also people who say they like ketchup on pizza. You hear me, Phil?
Yeah, ketchup on pizza is pretty disgusting.
Like that makes you a heretic, and it's not my it's not my job to judge you for it. That's my boss.
Oh no.
And
Well, I guess they wanted to do something different, but Paul
different.
Di'Anno is different from Bruce, and his voice worked for Maiden. So
Well, yeah, he was the OG, and
yeah, I know, but
the band sound kind of yes. Ketchup on pizza is evil. That is true.
Mhm.
But um,
They could have find
sauce,
good different, not shitty different.
dark and macabre works. This does not, man. Like when you compare it to the older, for the older album covers, like the art is just so low effort and so like drab and all that. Like even like on Iron Maiden itself or Killers, like yeah, you had like it was very dark and very kind of macabre, but you had bright colors like yellows and reds and all that kind of stuff. And this they just kind of everything's either like rusted steel
Mm-hmm.
or freaking like a slightly tan flesh tone.
Yeah, it's like the 90s, early 2000 metal
Yeah,
album cover color scheme.
yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Iron Maiden used to be forging those trends
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
with,
shit.
with like they like everyone else was trying to copy their album art and their sound. And it kind of sounds like on this one they were trying to copy everyone else.
Yeah, good point.
And it's kind of that reversal of yeah, Trey knows. Yeah.
It just doesn't work. They should have looked for something else.
And
Actually.
unfortunately, a side effect of adding Blaze Bailey, like me and Herbs were talking about before the show, is because his vocal range is so low,
Hmm.
they have to change the tones and pitches they work in down
Mm.
by like a full octave. And that doesn't and which means they also have to slow the tempo down because like those octaves don't really work with a fast-paced song unless you're going to go like full on thrash metal, which I can't picture Maiden doing, although it would be interesting.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't like that. I think it all combined on this album to like really turn a lot of Maiden fans off.
Yeah, I'm not
And
surprised. Yeah.
that's, you know, it it's not to, and we're not trying to, I try not to be negative about albums. I really do. But some albums and bands need to hear it. You can't just be like, "Oh yeah, it's great," like you would to your
Mm-hmm.
10-year-old practicing their instrument, and it sounds like two cats getting sawed in half. Um, like you can't do that with professionals, or they'll keep doing it. And that's how you get 90s and 2000s Metallica, where people were buying the albums anyway, and they were still having really positive reactions, so that's what they went with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think everyone gave them this record. Like, the previous two weren't great, but they were fairly inoffensive. This one, I think, made a lot of people really, really mad. Or it should have anyway. Um, and this is like everything wrong with 90s metal, or
Mm.
90s metal bands that were still around, those that hadn't just disappeared. Because this is 1995.
Yep.
So we're in the middle of the decade. Bands like, I mean, let's face it, Bruce is gone from Maiden. Halford's gone from Judas Priest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what? At Soul Assassin, that's perfect for those of us to remember that show. So it does look like Celebrity Deathmatch a little bit, only nowhere near as colorful. I don't know if any of you guys watched Celebrity Deathmatch on MTV back in the day.
I think that's US lore.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. I didn't.
This was an MTV show back in the day.
I didn't grow up with cable, so didn't get to watch MTV, but I knew about it for sure.
Yeah, basically it was like a claymation show, almost like pro wrestling with, but it was like a straight up death match with like chainsaws and all that kind of shit.
Oh shit!
And they would like pick like two like kind of current celebrities and just have them fight to the death, and it was fucking awesome.
That reminds me of that one game, Twisted Metal.
Oh yeah,
but
this was actually not all that long before Twisted Metal came out.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Celebrity Deathmatch was a hoot. That was back when MTV actually had good shows. I mean, you had like Celebrity Deathmatch, Beavis and Butthead.
Mm-hmm.
This is shortly after Headbangers Ball got canceled. But like, you would still hear rock and metal on MTV back then, and it was great.
Right. Right.
Even if it wasn't like, bands that were immortal classics like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden, you had early Korn on there. You had Rob Zombie. A lot. Metallica was on there all the time, obviously.
Right.
But like, it was still in the public consciousness, whereas going into the 2000s, it was pretty much gone.
Mm-hmm.
And they have episodes of CDM on YouTube. Oh, I'm gonna have to watch that later. It's been a while since I've seen that show. And that's very much the kind of show you could never do now. Kind of like early South Park.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where you would just get nuked. Like, imagine if they did like some of the early South Park episodes now.
Oh my god.
The amount of reeing that would go on would be fucking hysterical.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, some of the shit that they said in the show back then. Oh man.
Like, nowadays, everyone would be like Kyle's mom with what?
That was good.
But yeah, I mean, this album, like, listen to it if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then, unfortunately, this one isn't any better.
I think it's even worse.
This was the most painful one for me, man. It was the most painful one. I was like, can I just skip these songs? No, I can't. I have to listen to them, but they're so bad.
Trucker Rob's here. How's it going, Rob?
Hi,
What's up, Trucker Rob?
What's up?
Oh man, this album, as much as I banged on the last one for it, this one
It's
had all of the same problems, only worse.
yeah. Only good song that's acceptable is Klansman.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
even
yeah.
that one's only really good when Bruce Dickinson sings it.
Yep, indeed.
Like
What was
it's just one of those like, my God, why? Why is this a thing?
I can't remember if I made mention this part, but like really the only parts I had semi liked listening to was when Blaze wasn't singing, and even then I'm just sitting here like, "Ah, it's just not the same Iron Maiden, man, you
No,
know.
it's really not.
But yeah, at this point, this was painful,
Yeah,
so painful.
this one, like if you are an Iron Maiden fan, avoid this album at all costs. Like avoid this era at all costs. Like I know there's people out there who like, oh, I need to own and listen to every album. If that's your thing, go for it. But man, you are doing yourself a disservice by listening to these records. You will you will never again look at Iron Maiden the same way because they thought this was good enough to print.
Hmm.
Like
Well, at least album art is better than the last one. A little bit better.
it's better. It's still nowhere anywhere close to the original artwork. And you're right, it doesn't even look like Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the drawings themselves aren't bad, but overall, again, it seems really kind of generic late 90s shit. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a mess. The cover art is a complete mess, just like the album.
Yeah. And it took until the next one we're going to talk about for things to really improve. And when I say improve, I mean astronomically improve
Yeah.
with Brave New World. This was the first album I ever listened to by this band. And holy shit, what a record.
It's amazing. There is, again, not a single filler song. Every song is good, in my opinion. And this is like top 10 for sure.
Yeah, this is probably in my top 20 metal albums of all time.
Yeah, it's really good.
I wouldn't argue with that. Yeah, yeah.
And when you go down the track listing, like Mila says, I mean, you start off with The Wicker Man. And you immediately hear that energy that the band had been missing for the last decade.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you have that edge, you have that drive to it that you hadn't heard on No Prayer for the Dying on up into this album. And you're like, "Oh yeah, Adrian's back, isn't he?"
Yep. Yep.
And it really makes it obvious that he was part of the reason this band is what they are.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
And you can hear it in the complexity of some of the music too. Like we were saying earlier, when you have like those dual lead breaks and stuff like that, that comes
Yep.
back on this record.
Yep. With Murray and Smith, man. It's
And
like
they added in Yannick Gers,
yeah. Which
because
I
they
was
didn't get rid of him.
pleasantly surprised with. I mean, like I was saying earlier, like he sounds a lot better than he did in the previous albums. I'll say that, and I'm sure it's because Adrian Smith showed him what to do.
And
Yeah,
right, like you say, the art is back.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
And I think maybe the art, at least for Maiden, is kind of just where the band's headspace is at
yeah,
when they're producing a record. And for this one, you could like it comes back in full force, and it looks like Iron Maiden.
It does. The whole design and everything.
I would agree. Yeah, yeah.
And like even moving on into some of the track listing, you have Ghost of the Navigator, another one,
Amazing.
really great bass riff,
Mm-hmm.
and just a really cool riff that kind of like puts a new spin on the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner kind of storytelling, but in a really fast paced and really interesting ways. And it changed this song. They bring back tempo changes, which
Yeah,
is something they hadn't done in like 3 albums.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly.
Like
It
It's so
was.
good.
they actually changed their time signature in the song. It's like they do that again. Okay.
It's. I could definitely see. Murray probably wanted to play that stuff, but maybe he just wasn't wanting to push Yannick's, like push him, to play more difficult stuff.
And
And
maybe they were
Adrian
finally getting
Smith's stepping back in specifically was
and
like,
maybe they were finally getting to the point where they were comfortable with Yannick doing that. Because
yeah,
maybe
that's
he had some
true.
trouble doing it with Dave
Yeah,
until this point, and they kind of hadn't ironed out all the kinks yet to the point where they could put it on a record. And
right.
maybe this one, especially with Adrian back to kind of coach him and work with Dave and stuff like that, maybe shit really just started to click. Because it certainly sounds like it.
I think so too. Yeah.
Yep.
And also, Bruce coming back has a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause if you notice,
100%.
if you notice, their original tuning came back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And like when you compare like even just the lead track with the Wicker Man to the first track on pretty much every one since Seventh Son, it's much more fast paced, much more energetic, much more aggressive than anything they've done. And it really seems like they found their freaking nuts again. And like especially coming off of Virtual 11, most people are probably sitting there like, okay, what fresh hell is this? And they are like, oh wait, Adrian's back? Wait, Bruce is back too? Okay. And they were not disappointed. This album fucking kicks. And like I said, this is the first intro I ever had to Iron Maiden, the song Blood Brothers in particular. And within a week, I think I owned half of the discography. It really
It's
is.
a good introduction album.
It really is. Like if you have to, like, especially as somebody who didn't grow up with classic Maiden, I wasn't even born when a lot of that was recorded. Coming into this, it was just like, holy shit, who are these guys? Especially growing up in the 90s with like, shitty Metallica, like new metal, like all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And then you hear this, a classic like 80s heavy metal band at the top of their game. And you're just like, oh, okay.
What is this?
Yeah, like this is different. I like it. I like it a lot. And like, and especially like most 90s bands kind of forgot, and even bands that knew about them in the and going into the 90s kind of forgot what a guitar solo was.
That I agree with, yeah.
And even the ones there were would be like 2 seconds long.
Mm-hmm.
And even just the riffage on this one, like it's all good.
All of it. It's I can't emphasize it enough because I didn't think for the longest time that any new Maiden, and new by I mean like after the 90s, is any listenable. And then I listened to this like reluctantly. Someone told me that this is one of their best albums.
I'm gonna use that, Soul Assassin. That's fantastic.
So I gave it a chance, and I was blown away how good this is.
Yeah, I mean, especially, and I can see people being burned by the 90s stuff and seeing this on the shelves and being like, oh God.
Yeah, that was me. Mm-hmm.
And then you throw, like, you know what? I'll give them one last shot. And then this brought them right back in.
Yep, that's how it went.
And like there's some really interesting like guitar rhythms in this one, even like there's a couple I wanted your opinion on, being the best guitarist out of all of us.
Oh man, see that it's gonna be Adrian Smith, because he's hands down like one of the main driving elements in the, at least as far as the guitar writing goes. But
I meant like, what's your favorite guitar main riff on this album? For
Right.
me, it's the Nomad, and then probably Mercenary and Wicker Man.
The ones that I've listened to so far is like I'm just still spitting it, but I've gotten to the Mercenary and Dream of Mirrors. Like I like Mercenary a lot.
Oh, Mercenary is probably one of the best songs on this record.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
I definitely do enjoy Ghost of the Navigator as well, like you were saying. I'll have to go back and listen to Blood Brothers, but yeah, like so far it's like I'm not hearing a song that I dislike for once. Those
Hmm.
other two albums, man, that was painful.
I mean, as
uh,
a record, like this whole thing fits together very well as well. The
right.
older ones
Yeah.
didn't. You could tell this was written and composed as one solid piece
They're
with
working
different
together as
Seamless.
approaches
a
to it.
solid
Yeah.
unit. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And again, you hear that energy come back into the band with Bruce's operatic vocals too, like from the
Mhm.
very minute with the Wicker Man.
Oh yeah, I was getting goosebumps listening to that one.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. Yeah, because you hear them all back together and you just hear the energy and they're playing.
Yeah,
It's
and
it's great.
especially about that topic and some of the lyrics too, like with "Your time will come."
Mhm.
For those of you who don't know what a Wicker Man is, go look it up. It is a particular form of human sacrifice.
There's a great movie about it too, made
Yeah,
in the
the
70s.
You mean the original? Okay, yeah,
the
okay.
Yeah,
original
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I, I,
yeah.
I thought you meant the one with Nicolas Cage. I'm like, great is a strong
Well,
word.
Depends on your definition of great, I guess.
oh, the original.
Yes,
Original.
yes.
Absolutely.
The original is fantastic.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's not the bees. Oh,
That that part was so bad.
yeah.
That movie is kind of like the Blaze albums
Oh
version.
yeah, where it's just like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a thing that exists. Thanks, I hate it. Oh yes, like that's one of those movies that like has points where it's so bad it's amazing.
I agree with that. There's something in it, magic.
Yeah, it's like like that moment when you realize they had to try to get things this wrong.
Actually true though.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my god, this is so bad, it's hilarious. Um, unlike Rings of Power, which is just so bad, it's horrifying and sad.
I haven't watched a single episode or a trailer or anything, so
I would keep it that way.
yeah.
I've seen just enough to actively hate everyone that was involved in that project from top to bottom.
Mhm.
So you've been watching the episodes, Pope?
I have not been watching religiously. I've been like skimming through them.
Okay. Okay.
Arcasul actually has been doing a review series on that. God bless you, sir.
Right.
It's kind of like as with the Batwoman thing, where we're just posting our emotional damage off onto him.
Yeah.
Excuse me, let me say that right. Emotional damage. But no, it's oh man, it's really really not good. And the worst part is like it's not just badly written. Like that would be bad enough. But given how much money we know this season cost, it looks like it was done on like a shoestring budget.
Yeah, it looks like community theater.
Yeah, like you can like there's armor plates that you can tell are just plastic.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It looks like it came from Spirit Halloween, and that's kind of an insult to them.
Hmm.
Um, like it's just like, oh my god, what the fuck are you people doing? And oh man, well, that's I mean, you want to talk about desecrating something awesome? That's that show is kind of the Blaze Bailey era of Tolkien.
Yeah,
Where
I
it's
was
just like
thinking the same.
where
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a thing.
Blaze
I
Bailey
re-
era. I'm gonna start using that.
it's like, yes, that's a thing. I wish it wasn't. I hate everything now.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's the worst part is they probably bought it on Amazon.
all things considered, I would not be surprised.
They probably even didn't even give them a discount either. The greedy bastards.
Oh my god. Yeah, from what little I've seen a couple of the like trailer commercials. I'm just like, this does not look interesting at all. Like even
It's
the
not only not
CGI that's there is it's bad. It's bad.
it's not only is it not interesting, it's actively atrocious. And oh, sorry, this one. No, Trucker Rob, I have been watching House of the Dragon, and I actually really dig it. It's maybe that's because Rings of Power is out alongside it, and anything can look like an absolute gem compared to that. But it's pretty competently done. Like the acting is pretty good. The writers actually know what they're talking about and know the material, and can apparently recognize the fact, or remember what they did 2 scenes ago and not completely reverse it. Like there's a couple scenes in Rings of Power where like somebody will say they're absolutely not doing it, like there's no way they can, yada yada, and then turn around and do it. Like within 5 minutes,
Yeah,
with no explanation inside of 5 minutes.
the entire show just seemed like a shit show. The
Oh,
whole
it
thing
is.
and everything around it, just a shit show.
It is. It should be the actual technical definition of shit show. But no, like going into like even some of the later tracks, like there's a lot of albums that sound good in the first half.
Yeah.
Like Wicker Man, Ghost of the Navigator, Brave New World itself, Blood Brothers, The Mercenary, all really solid tracks. And even when you go into like Dream of Mirrors, Fallen Angel, the Nomad is one of the probably one of the best tracks they've come out with since 1988. Like it's a longer track, but it is like the music is interesting. It changes up a couple of times. It tells you a really cool story, and the guitar riffage in that is absolutely stellar. And it's kind of like a desert version of Rime of the Ancient Mariner in some ways.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, yep.
And like I had to pick a song on this album I had to diss, it would probably be the last track, The Thin Line Between Love and Hate.
Oh my god, I agree so much with that. Yeah.
Like,
It's the least favorite of mine.
Yeah, it's not a bad song, but compared to the rest of it, it sounds terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It's like they went from
Okay.
absolute epic, like, great god tier music into, yeah, this is all right. But it sounds really bad by comparison. But overall, for me, going into this era, from start to finish, Seventh Son, I have very few problems with. They're experimenting with something new, and I didn't think it worked. Mila, you obviously love it. But I could see that there was still effort going into the music and going into making it sound different, but still Maiden, and all that. And for that reason, I can still call it classic Iron Maiden. Pretty much the entirety of the 1990s, however.
Rough.
Yeah. I mean, what do you guys think overall?
Rough.
It's either completely forgettable or shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, good way to enunciate it. Yeah.
Like you were saying, Mila, like No Prayer for the Dying, you completely forgot that album existed.
I seriously did, and I don't think I've ever listened to it like more than a few times in my life because I completely forget it that it exists.
Well, so did I when I was doing the research for this episode. I go into their discography. I'm like going just up the track listing from Seventh Son, and then when I get to the next one, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that was Fear of the Dark. There's another one here.
Ooh,
Yeah, for real.
big ooh.
Oh man, that was like a legit discovery for me of just like, oh, there's another Iron Maiden album that I forgot entirely about.
Yeah, I think the same would have happened to Fear of the Dark if not the title track.
The
Right.
title track and Be Quick and Be Dead or Be Dead are both in my all-time Iron Maiden playlist. So I hear those on a regular basis. I'm like, oh yeah, that was this. And off of No Prayer for the Dying, for as far as all-time classics, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. That's about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has good tracks on it, but not anywhere near what 80s Maiden was capable of.
Yeah.
And and again, the lineup change the sound, and it gets a lot more simplistic, a lot more toned down, and that is precisely the reason people liked Iron Maiden, was the complex sound that still sounds really good, still sounds really tight. They're having fun with it. And then in 1990, that just goes away. And it's just, yeah.
I'm just shaking my head thinking about that era. There's not much I can say except shaking my head.
Pain. Oh man, yeah, just.
Now,
how did I put it? Can I skip the song whenever Blaze is singing? Oh man, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's really just like. It's that famous quote from Mr. T. It's like, "What's your prediction for the next decade, Clever? Pain." I mean, I really, guys, I really wish I had better things to say about these records. Like, obviously, we're all three of us are fans of the band.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we dig a lot of their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I try to be positive about everything I show you guys. Like, there are a couple bands that we've, been suggested to do that we just really haven't liked enough to even do the episode. Because I really go out of my way to try to be positive on this channel because I'm enough of a curmudgeon already. But it's really hard to be overly positive when confronted with this.
Well, the positive aspect, we all can agree that the songs in the Blaze era are not that bad. If Bruce sings them, they can be really good.
That's very true.
Yeah,
it's not the songs themselves; it's who's singing them.
Right.
Although I'm not sure that's of much comfort to Blaze Bailey.
Poor guy.
Honestly, Bailey should feel like shit. Because man, what a way to ruin a great thing.
I know, but he's probably felt bad about it ever since. And
it's entirely possible. Yeah.
And given how famous this band is, everything he's done since, like any interview he's been on, any like podcast he's done, he's probably gotten it in the comments like, "I still haven't forgiven you for Iron Maiden, you son of a bitch."
Oh man.
I'm sure he knows that not very popular.
Yeah, and my heart does go out to him a little bit because he probably went in there and did his best.
Yeah. I can tell he tried. And it's at least there's that. But
that's kind of the you tried.
Yeah.
like you say to your
you
kid.
tried sticker.
Yeah. Here's your participation trophy. Now go away.
Well, I think would be interesting, since we all like this particular album so much, if we ever do a third part, we can compare how it goes from this forward.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
that would be interesting.
Because I don't think it's all bad. It's just
It's not. I like to give it shit because it's nowhere near as good as this.
mm-hmm.
Mm.
And I think that's important to be like, oh, well, it's not that bad. Compare it to when they're actually on point and actually firing as they should.
Yeah.
So this is the new benchmark for Iron Maiden going into 2000. And unfortunately, I don't think they hit this except on a couple of songs in the next era, which we will get into eventually. But open it up to you guys. Like, what are your feelings on like either specific songs, like really big criticisms you have? Either you guys or the chat for this era, because this has been a really short one. Because just like there's not a lot when you talk about really good stuff, the conversation never ends.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel
Yeah.
like we've just glossed over a lot of these records.
Yeah, it was my fault for forgetting one of them exists. So
Well,
I
no,
couldn't.
but like that's not your fault. That's the band's fault for letting you forget.
I couldn't really say much about it.
Well, I mean, Brave New World. I mean, it's hard to say enough good things about this record.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your favorite song? I think it's a Nomad, but what about Herbs?
I'd have to agree. I'm really enjoying that one. Yeah.
Just that
Yeah.
Middle
Mhm.
Eastern influenced riff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I would
the
say too.
and the tempo changes. They brought back tempo changes.
Yep.
It's really good.
Yeah, like it's funny. Like I mean, you guys are. I mean, you guys are both music nerds like me. I mean, especially Herbs, you play too, and
Mhm.
you're just
Yeah.
like so we're listening as guitar players, and it was like, "Ooh, that was cool,"
Right, right.
and pretty much. I mean, No Fear for the Dying kind of had a couple of moments like that on Tail Gunner and a couple of other stuff during the solos.
There were some parts I was thinking of with Fear in the Dark too, where
Fear in the
they have some moments with the tempo changes, but it's not much. Yeah. It's like you were saying earlier, just maybe not entirely trusting Yannick as much as they would with Smith, or working with the new guy basically. But yeah, man, it's good to hear
It is really good to hear
all of the elements put back together with this one.
like
Yeah.
true Iron Maiden return. Not to sound like too much of a purist, but oh man, like some of this stuff is just like it's not even bad. It's you're just kind of going, uh-huh. Like that's it. Like because especially with Iron
Yeah.
Maiden, you're looking for a tempo change. You're looking for something to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said backstage about the X Factor, I was just listening to that, and we get 2.5 minutes into the album before you hear an electric guitar.
Yeah, that part struck me as strange. Yeah.
On an Iron
It's
Maiden record.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's something that we would hear a lot going forward.
Yeah.
And it's like a minute and a half before you have any kind of instrumentation whatsoever. It's like this weird chant.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like, oh God, why? Like, having it for a couple of seconds at the beginning of an album, yeah, sure, whatever. Like you're kind of setting the tone, getting people in the headspace for the record. Yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on.
And on.
Yeah. And then we're at the minute mark, and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay.
I do like long intros, but I don't think it's Iron Maiden the strongest point,
Yeah, there are certain bands that do it really well.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys are known for. I mean, let's face it. When they're at their best, they're quick, punchy, 2 or 3 minute get in, get out
Yep.
anthems like The Trooper
Yeah.
or Aces High. I think Aces High is like 2.5 minutes.
Yep.
And even like Number of the Beast is only like 2 minutes 25.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they are at their best when they're at their fastest and most aggressive, which is weird because Brave New World's really good, and each one of those tracks is like 4.5 to 7 minutes long. But they musically did a lot of things with it, like you said, Herbs. They get really progressive
Yep.
with a
Yep.
lot of it, and they are doing interesting things on this record, at least.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
previous ones, they get kind of progressive, and it's either A, boring, or B, horrible.
I would agree with that. Yeah, Yannick doesn't seem very suited to, at least creatively, being able to write progressive rock in the same way Adrian Smith would. It's yeah,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
I mean, nothing against him.
And
Nothing against him, but
nothing against prog rock either.
yeah,
I'm a fan of a lot. I mean, hell, we just did an episode on Tool last week, and
right.
at least I'm a huge Rush fan. Like, we're not saying that progressive equal bad, but Iron Maiden plus progressive tends to equal bad.
Yeah.
Unfortunate circumstances, you could say. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think part of it too is that Steve Harris has always kind of had that experimental streak in him,
yeah, yeah.
which is fine, except when he doesn't have Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson, they're kind of keeping a rein on him.
Right, right,
I'd agree with that, yeah.
And they don't, and again, after this album, I think Martin Birch is no longer their producer. So you also don't have him going, all right, Steve, like we need to cut this track. It's been 6 minutes.
right, right.
And unfortunately, that's what would go into the next era of Maiden is these overly long. Yeah, there are a few things that are worse than you too, especially when they put albums in my iTunes playlist that I can't get rid of.
Oh
Oh
my god.
no.
I forgot about that, yeah.
It's been a while since I've had an iPhone. Yeah, that's something they did.
Yes, it was. And you know what? At least if it had been like the Joshua Tree or something like that, I could have forgiven them for it. But it wasn't.
Oh no.
Ugh.
I didn't even listen to the album just out of
I listened
pure
to
why the fuck.
I listened to one of the songs off of it. I'm like, why? Why would you inflict this album on everyone? Was it because it was so bad you knew no one would pay for it?
Probably.
God.
It's one of those bands that is everywhere, but I don't know anyone who listens to it.
I mean, early U2 is actually pretty okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I'll say even like the Joshua Tree is a good album. You have songs like Sunday Bloody Sunday and stuff like that on there. That stuff's good. It's the stuff you hear on the radio.
Right.
Unfortunately, unlike most bands, when you dig down into their discography, the stuff you heard on the radio was the good stuff. Everything else is just horrible.
That's rough.
Yeah. Like, and I always hate that too. When you hear like a really good song on the radio and you're just like, oh yeah, let me go look up that album because that's absolutely awesome. And then that's the only good track on the record.
Yeah, that was the downside of buying records blind. You hear the radio
Mhm.
song and then you buy it and you're like, oh god.
Yeah, it's
Right,
like,
right.
oh yeah, they have this song. And that's it. That had to be especially rough back in the age of vinyl. Like, especially if, like I said before, they used to bury the single at the tail end of the album.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to sit there and suffer through 40 minutes worth of tripe
Yeah.
in order to get to the song you actually wanted to listen to. At least with a cassette player, you could like fast forward it. Records
Yeah,
don't
that
have
is true.
records don't have a fast forward feature.
Yeah, they don't.
I mean, if you really want to destroy your record, you could play it at fucking double speed, but Yeah, no, don't do that. It not only damages the record itself, but it'll damage the record player. Um, when CDs came out, obviously the skip button became a thing, although we have complaints about that for different reasons, namely the fact that people would just start skipping tracks. And as a result, the coherent album sound that you saw during the 80s
It just went away for the most
ero-
part.
eroded in a lot of bands.
Yeah.
So instead of like that coherent sound like you get on Brave New World, hey, we got Mr. Grant Gregory in the chat. How's it going?
Hey, mister.
Hope you're doing well,
Heyo.
man. Good to hear you. Good to see you here. And like Brave New World is a coherent unit. Seventh Son is a coherent unit,
Mm-hmm.
and they work.
Mhm.
All the tracks work together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the albums in the middle really don't.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
Like I'm not
Complete
saying
mess.
that they're all bad songs, but you kind of get this jumble of sounds that don't really sound like they were written together.
Yeah. In this one, you can really feel that they got inspiration back, and it's
Mhm.
everyone was really happy to do this album. In the last ones, you can hear that no one was really into it.
Yeah, everyone's just like, fuck it, we need to do a new album. So, yeah, these songs are good enough, I guess.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but that's how it sounds.
Yeah.
It's like if you ever been working on like a construction project or whatever, and like you start off and you're measuring twice, you're doing like really solid quality stuff because you want it to look nice, and then 12 hours later you're exhausted and you're just like, fuck it, good enough. and just start doing shit the quick and dirty way.
Right.
It's just like, I'm tired and I want to I want to go sit down.
I can understand that they wanted to keep doing music because that's what they enjoy doing,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but
And
there's
it's
no
also what they get paid
inspiration.
to do. It's also what pays their bills.
Yeah, exactly. But there was no inspiration, or I don't know, just
No.
lacked a lot of things.
And unlike the Judas Priest 90s era, the Ripper Owens era, um in that era, I feel like it was mostly the band's fault, like, and just the era of music they were in, where music was trying to change and not in a good way.
Hmm.
But I don't think Ripper Owens was the problem. Like, he came in to fill Rob Halford's shoes, which good luck to him, but he is a great singer in his own right, and he actually did a fairly good job on Jugulator and Demolition. It was the band that was the problem, and just the
Right.
time
Right.
they lived in. I can't say that about the Blaze Bayley era.
Yeah.
I think he was the cause of most of the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Because like when you look at it, like from the down tuning to the slower tempo to the lack of that soaring vocal and really operatic kind of vocal energy, that's all on him. It's either him directly or things that the band had to do to incorporate him into it. So, and that's not excusing the rest of the band, by the way. I'm not going to say that this is all Blaze's fault.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's an overall lack of effort by the band and adding in a singer who was probably out of his depth.
Have you listened to the Bruce solo albums?
Yes, and they're pretty damn good. I enjoy Dickinson's solo work quite a bit.
Mm.
I don't think I have really dabbled into them. I like Halford solo stuff.
Halford's solo stuff, whether it be with Fight or Halford, is great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he still sounds fantastic. He still sounds like he's having fun. It's all high energy. Even when he's just playing with a band of basically hired guns, he still sounds really energetic, and it still sounds like a Judas Priest album almost.
Yeah,
Just
Resurrection is great.
yeah,
Mm.
like especially what is it, Made in Hell, where he's going through the like the history of metal basically in one song. It was
Mm.
fucking gorgeous. I loved it because like you're hearing like the history of heavy metal being screamed at you by one of the guys who created it.
Mm.
Epic.
And Insanity Methods, what's going on, man? Don't think I've seen you here before. So thanks for showing up.
Hi, friend.
Yeah, hello, friend. At least, I mean, this isn't the best stream to come in on because we're going to be. I mean, we've been fairly negative on this whole thing, but glad to have you here. Hope you enjoy it. And yeah, this whole thing was just. And you'd think their producer would be there because this is why you have a producer to tell you no.
You would think. I guess that just didn't happen with Maiden.
I guess not.
Eh,
Like,
I don't know, man.
this is why like this is literally their job is to tell you no, stop.
Yeah.
Like this is not good enough. Do it again.
Oh my god, I'm just wondering the first time you hear the Blaze album as a producer, like what would you think? What would you say?
Clearly somebody thought that was acceptable, or they did so many takes he finally just threw up his hands and went, fuck it, I guess that's what we're getting.
I mean, yeah.
Trey's got it perfect.
Yeah.
Either that or he's just sitting there in the booth just like, help, I need an adult. Like these, I mean, because these guys have a good idea of what this band should sound like. They have, I mean, in the case of Martin Birch, he's been working with them since Seventh Son. So he's really familiar with the band. He's really familiar with what they can do. So was this really the best they were capable of in 1990 or 1992? Or was it we needed an album in the next 2 years, we had a deadline, and we pushed out what we had to?
Or is it something like, it's the new era of music, guys. Let's try something new.
Yeah, that might have had something to do with it as well.
I can see that, yeah.
And there's a difference, and we're not being like, grognards here with like, 80s metal is only metal, brr. But when you're a band that came up on a specific sound, Metallica, talking to you here, you don't then change your entire sound on a dime and expect fans to go with it. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying for something a little different on No Fear for the Dying, on No Prayer for the Dying. And it kind of worked on that record, and maybe it would have been better with Adrian.
Yeah.
I think it definitely would have been. But when you look at all the mistakes that were made from the writing to the production to the lineup, it's just a comedy of errors essentially, only it's not that funny. Or it's just like you take one of the biggest bands and one of the most beloved bands in the world in 1988, and by 1992 most of the fan base is like, fuck this shit, I'm gone.
Right.
And to me that's really sad, because when you look at it, like, as I said before, Seventh Son is not my favorite Maiden record, but it is still of much higher quality than most things that came after it.
Oh, for sure.
And so, like, for me, Power Slave is the peak. Like that's the top of the mountain, and
Mm.
I don't think any band will hit that mark again.
I don't know what it was for me, but for the longest time, Power Slave was my favorite, and then Seven Sun just took it over. I just really like that album.
Yeah, I mean, it is a different. Again, it's a different sound for Maiden, but it
Mm-hmm.
works.
It works, and it's coherent, and it's tight, and
It's still got all the original members working together,
mm-hmm.
and really, it's really a team effort, and you can tell that on that record.
Yeah.
Mm.
And same thing with everything before it. Like, because they had already changed. It's not like, oh, well, they'd never been through a singer change before. Bullshit. They went through one in 1982, and Number of the Beast is one of their immortal classics.
Mm-hmm.
Despite Bruce having a very different vocal style than Paul Di'Anno.
Exactly.
But it worked because the songs were still well written and played very well, and Bruce could adapt to a new style and change the style for his performances.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, okay, so like that's a compilation. So like at least you came in on the high point. Mine was actually the one on the screen. It was Brave New World, but I came in at the right time because this album's fantastic. If I had come in with Virtual 11, like, could you imagine like someone handing that album to you, be like, "Oh yeah, you got to listen to Iron Maiden."
Oh no.
You would hate Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Oh my god.
Like, especially if like you listen to that and then like, you know, like, all right, well, I guess I'm not a fan of that band. And somebody just brings it up in casual conversation, like especially somebody who knows the classics and you don't. And you're just gonna be like, oh yeah, Iron fucking Maiden. Like, dude, Maiden's fucking trash. Because that's the only thing you've ever heard.
Oh no.
Luckily, it's a complete opposite. I don't think anyone gets introduction from that. That's what she said.
Yeah, there we go. Mila is our discount Nina.
Oh, that's sad.
She is our female Finnish representative that swears a lot.
Sad. I'm a diversity hire.
No, well, kind of. Do elves count as diversity?
Wait, what?
Well,
I guess.
What's up?
Oh man, but no, that
I'm dying here.
I would say the opposite of a discount, though. Sheesh, Pope.
not true.
Oh,
true. They're both great in their own ways. But one
as great as a female can be.
No, that's not. Well, yes. I wouldn't put it like that. That makes it sound mean. Make me sound like Ryan when you say it like that. Which you're also not wrong.
Oh, Ryan's great.
I still love that whole meme where it was just like hashtag Ryan Kindle is not a racist, he's a sexist.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Especially because like I don't know if you guys have met Ryan in person. He is one of the greatest guys of all time.
Oh, he's the nicest person.
He really is.
Ever.
Yeah.
He's still really fucking loud though.
Mm-hmm.
But he is like the nicest guy ever. I have a picture with him somewhere. It's probably on my phone. But no, I mean this band, like I said, imagine this being your first introduction to Iron Maiden. Like you're in high school in the mid '90s, and somebody's wearing an Iron Maiden T-shirt, and it's like, oh yeah, you got to listen to their stuff. So you pick up X Factor or Virtual 11 because that's the newest one. Oof. That's just one of those like, well, that's the wrong intro to that band, and congratulations, you just turned them off to it completely.
Right.
I think my first introduction to those albums, because I avoided the new Maiden eras completely, was when I heard Bruce sing some of the songs live, and then I went and listened to the albums.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's good to play some of your classic stuff or some of the other stuff live every now
Mm-hmm.
and again, is because some people it's their first experience with the band and they've never heard this stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
Although Bruce goes back and forth on that count. Sometimes he'll play the old stuff and sometimes he won't. And he gets really mad when people ask him.
I didn't go see them when they were playing, like in my closest city. I wish I could have, but I just couldn't go. But apparently, they don't play that many Senjutsu songs.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like they realize that this album did not get a good reception,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
and we should play the stuff that people actually came to hear.
Yeah, my friend went and he said he was in the floor somewhere there, pretty
Yeah,
close to the stage, and every time they were playing Senjutsu, he was showing the finger and booing. Fuck you!
and well, you know what? It's important that fans do that. It's not disrespectful. It's not mean. It's giving your honest opinion about what those songs are, and that's your closest interaction to the band. Is because when they're on their album or on social media, you're not talking to the band members themselves most of the time. You're talking to a PR manager who, most of the time it's just like, oh, well, it's just a couple trolls, whatever. Like, the sentiment. Same thing with that Hollywood gets. It's just a couple trolls. You're not doing anything wrong. Yada yada. People are just mad. Well, when people are giving you the finger and booing you on stage, well,
Mm-hmm.
clearly there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially a band like Iron Maiden that will draw crowds of hundreds of thousands the world over. Probably the one metal band that could pull off an arena tour in the US. And yeah, Insanity. Bruce has taken care of his pipes incredibly well,
Yep.
despite having throat cancer, I think twice now.
Something like that, yeah.
So the fact that he can even still sing at all, let alone sound as good as he does,
Mm.
and especially sound as good as he does live,
Yep.
is really good. I would put Rob Halford up in that category as well. Again, I told these guys backstage there will be no show next Sunday as I'm going to see Judas Priest live in Boston. So that'll be fun.
Oh yeah.
Is it the
And
same tour still?
yes, it is. I think this is one of the makeup dates for the show that was going to be
Oh,
in Lowell
yeah,
that I
yeah.
missed because I had tickets to that show too. This
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be
yeah.
this will be the fourth time in a row that I've tried to go see Iron Maiden or go see Judas Priest, and they've canceled it.
Yeah. It's gonna be amazing. That set list is everything I could have ever wished for.
Yeah. And yeah, then you have Vince Neil who looks like he ate Vince Neil. Not to shit on the man in his prime. Vince Neil. Um Soul Assassin, I'm not quite sure how to do that from my phone. I may play with that this week and see if I can upload some stuff. But if not, I will be doing a album review. Well, I'm getting down into the nitty gritty of my move now, so I may not have my whole setup. So it may just be an audio with some pictures. I probably won't have my camera set up again. But I'm going to be talking about the Airborne show I went to in September, and then probably I'll do a video on the pre-show. So we'll see how that shakes out, and we'll see what kind of quality I can get out of it. But that is a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, later, Fizz. But yeah, like Vince Neil in his prime was actually pretty good. Like, regardless of your opinions on Motley Crue, he was a pretty good singer.
Yeah, yeah. I personally don't like Motley Crue.
I mean, I'm not the world's biggest fan, They have some good songs. Unfortunately, you hear most of them on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that Trey, like probably his greatest vocal performance was actually on Home Sweet Home. That was a good track. But with that, I think we're gonna close this episode out. Like this, I'm sorry it's not longer, guys, but these albums, they're really just not much to talk about on this, unless you want to go into each track in detail, just how shit it is on some of these. But yeah, I think we're gonna close this one out here. Go around the room and Mila, what you got going on coming up?
Not much. I have a Twitch channel where I never stream. I'm called the anti-streamer. So that's what I have going on, I guess, if I stream. Otherwise, you will see me as a wrench in many, many channels, I guess.
Including this one, I think.
Yep, this one too.
All right. But Herbs, what do you got going on this week, bud?
Yeah. So usual streaming on Twitch for the week, probably Monday and Wednesday.
All right.
And then yeah, that's about it. Just chilling, hanging out in chats.
Yeah, I know the feeling. And as for me, like Mila, I have a Twitch channel. I barely ever remember I have a Twitch channel. So I stream every now and again, usually Warhammer 40k or BattleTech related. Although me and Herbs have been playing around with the idea of playing some World of Warships for you all.
Oh yeah.
With a fellow gang of retards for your enjoyment while we suck at playing shooty boats. So that should be fun. We'll probably try to test stream sometime or not a stream, but like a test run sometime this week and see if it's something we want to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll get back to you with that. And as I said, no show next week. We'll be back to you the week after that. And we'll try to have some Halloween themed stuff for next time.
Ooh.
Because we're in
Sounds
spooky
like fun.
month. So we'll have to do some brainstorming on that one. But with that, thanks for showing up. You guys have been amazing as always. I love to have you all here. Thanks to the panel for showing up. You guys are great as always. It's always good talking to you. And with that being said, take care, stay healthy, stay safe. I love you all. And I'll catch you next time.